Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. For the last couple of years, I've been really obsessed with short story, writing short story, getting everybody else to write short story, sharing prompts to get you to write short story. Last year, I was taking on the challenge of trying to submit my short stories. And that really, I've mentioned it here on the podcast before, was a task that was above me at the time. It was just too many other things on my plate, and I felt like I was spending a lot of time. I did spend a lot of time looking for markets to send my stories to, but then I didn't follow through in time for the deadlines, what have you, and it just kept getting away from me. So I'm back at creating short stories, writing a short story every single week, and now I do have, my home base of storyhoarder.substack where I post my fiction on a weekly basis. But wouldn't you know that as I'm going through all this, I checked my mailbox last week, and I've got the latest issue of the Writer magazine, which is the 135th anniversary issue, which floored me right there. I had no idea that this magazine was in print for so long. But there is just so much juiciness in this issue for short story writers. It says the 135th anniversary issue on the cover, and then there's a little dot in the corner that says plus where to sell your short stories. But it's not just about selling short stories. There's a great article on the long and short of the short story. There's also an article about the digital literary revolution. And I just really wanted to shine a spotlight on what was going on in this month's issue. Well, is it this month? No, this is actually the April 2022 issue. And just I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things that I guess I knew, but I haven't talked about that came up in flipping through this issue. And that is some of the more unique markets that we don't necessarily always think of when we're talking about our short stories. And just flipping through to find the page that has this little insert about other unique markets. And it says technology has expanded to add some new and interesting short story markets. And the first is the one that you are engaging with right now, the podcast. And they have a list of short story podcasts. This is on page 23 of the issue. And just a couple of the short story podcasts that they list are The Other Stories, The Truth, Lit Reading, Brick Moon Fiction. There's a couple of more, but that's definitely if you want to listen to short stories, but I'm sure some of these are actually even looking for short stories. And we've talked about this in the Happy Campers Club. A couple of writers have said, I really think that some of my stories could be turned into a podcast. I don't know if I want to take on learning that technology and becoming a podcaster, but I can see where that could happen. Well, here are a couple of podcasts that are out there already happening and perhaps are looking for submissions. There's also the Short Story Dispenser, which they mentioned. This is not a podcast. This is basically a French-based publisher that's also in the U.S. that's been around since 2011. And they say their goal was to make literature accessible to all by providing free short stories for all ages. So there's more than 350 short stories dispensers on 5 continents. There are 110 in the U.S. that can be found in public libraries, universities, schools, and airports, train stations, and hospitals. The stories are curated through the literary review Short Circuit. So there's plenty of places here that are mentioned about where you can read short stories, which is one thing that we always have to be doing if we're writing, and how to also find a space and a home for our short stories. They were saying where to read short stories online: Flash Fiction Online, Fictionaut, Daily Science Fiction, the morning short. And again, these are all different markets for you also. Where to find markets, I've mentioned this before, I think on this podcast. I know we've talked a lot about this in the Happy Campers Club. Duotrope, New Pages, and Submittable are the three that I'm always rotating through. But they also added the Nonconformist mag, which has a list of, it says the big list of literary magazines and journals. So I didn't know about that one, and that's another great space to sort of check into. But I really want to recommend this entire magazine, although I am avoiding this one article in here that I do have to sit down and read. It's the Great M- debate, and I don't know if anybody else is madly in love with the M- on the same level that I am, but the subtitle of this article says, "Writers love it, editors loathe it, learn why, plus how to use it correctly but sparingly." That little note about "but sparingly" upsets me because I am one of the writers that loves it so much. But yeah, I wanted to just sort of share this with you and mention that in this issue, even in the sidebar of so many of the articles, there are even more markets and spaces to share your short stories. I'm just flipping. They have upcoming submission calls. There's one for thriller and mystery called Claymore Award. Clinch, writing about martial arts. I mean, this is fantastic. Then there's the Orson Prize, which is for poetry and fiction. But I mean, as the pages go on, there's more and more. I think it's a great issue to pick up if you don't subscribe to the Writer magazine. Potentially, and I don't know about this, they may have many of these articles on their website. So I will put the link to the Writer magazine on within the show notes so that you can go check that out. But I'll definitely put that in because if you are a short story writer, if you are writing flash, they are also launching their first ever 500-word contest. So it says our first annual 500-word contest opens for entries on March 15, 2022. We welcome fiction or nonfiction submissions in any genre as long as they're told in 500 words or less. Make every word count. The grand prize is $1,000, and then, of course, you'd be published in their magazine. And the deadline is April 18th, 2022. So this is, happening right now. By the time you hear this episode, you probably have like a week before the submissions open and about a month to sort of get it in before the end. It does not have the details on this page about entry fees or anything like that. So I would head to their website, which is just writermag.com. That's the website for the writing magazine. But if you want to go specifically to where the contest is, that's writermag.com /contests. And they list all their contests there, but this one will be their first ever 500-word writing contest. So really great magazine, a fun read. And I'm very happy that I've been subscribed because I tend to miss these sometimes, and this one is just full of so much information that I'm, into at the moment. It's nice when the articles are singing to your needs at the moment. But on that point, I do have to say I have to be careful about where my writing needs are at this moment. And I don't know if anybody else has this issue, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit of NaNoWriMo fever. And I think a lot of people do experience this in the fall. But I've mentioned this before. Camp NaNoWriMo is like my favorite, especially the April camp. I don't know why. It's just a nice time of year for me. I can really get stuff done. Maybe it's the spring of it all. I feel more creative. And as the Happy Campers Club got started this week, and I was asking everybody else about what their goals were for this week and beyond, and, what do you want to accomplish in the 2 months that you're here in the writing community? Of course I have to ask myself the same questions, right? What do I want to get done this week? And what do I want to say I have finished by the end of these 2 months of intensive writing community support and, meetings every single day. And it is nearly impossible for me to ignore all that happens in April, all the different writing challenges, NaPoWriMo and the blogging challenge A to Z, and of course, Camp NaNoWriMo. And I'm, as I'm thinking about the 2 months, I say, well, will I be writing a novel? And I really did not think at all that I was going to be, because I have the Stop Writing Alone book. This is the season of critique partnerships in Happy Campers. So we're going to be partnering up, getting feedback on writing. And it has been my intention to bring the Stop Writing Alone book to those critique partnerships. So, other Happy Campers could read and give me feedback, and I could really polish the book up. But I'm like, okay, but what is the new thing I'm going to work on? Well, Nicole, you said you're going to write 52 short stories in 52 weeks. Of course, the new thing you're going to work on is new short stories. That's enough. You have your Substack you have to bring fiction to all the time. You're good. But what happened? What happened, ladies and gentlemen? You know what happened. A seedling, a tiny baby seedling of a novel idea has planted itself in my brain. And so on Tuesday, when we had our write-ins, we had 4 different meetings for write-ins, 4 different hours. I said, well, one of these hours, I'm just going to give over to this seedling of an idea, because it's been just an idea that was planted in my head, and I had not even committed it to any type of writing. I didn't write it down in a notebook. I didn't jot it down in notes in my phone. It was just this idea in my head. That's dangerous, right? If you don't do something with an idea like that, it can fly away. So I said, okay, one of my hours at the write-in, I'm going to open up my notebook and sketch out the seedling of an idea. And the way we do the write-ins is we do writing sprints. And because most of the Happy Campers are very seasoned at doing write-ins, we're not, we tend to push more towards 20-minute sprints rather than 15-minute sprints now. So we had 2 20-minute sprints, and I spent one 20-minute sprint going through the idea. And I said, okay, maybe I should walk away from it. We had a little chat, and I went back to the idea again, and I kind of rewrote it again. And oh man, I think it might be sticking. I think I might be writing a novel, a draft of a novel in April, and I can't believe it. So I am really trying to be sort of balanced in my decision here, really look at everything on my plate and say, is this realistic? The good thing is the idea is written down. So I don't have to do it right now. I could say, Nicole, you have enough going on with revisions of Stop Writing Alone and with your, creation and curation of short stories. And you can save that seedling for a later date. But there's something really just nice about the excitement of a new idea, the opportunity of community at my back while I draft something new. So we will see what happens. Now, I've mentioned this before. I am a first draft with the door closed type of gal. So that's why I'm just calling it a seedling of an idea, not telling you anything about it, except I will say that it's YA, of course. When I write longer pieces, that tends to be my home. My short fiction's all over the place, but longer pieces, I tend to fall into YA. And I will say that on that second rewrite of the seedling idea, one of the things that I asked myself was, what would be like the format of the book? Like, what is the sort of the way my character, my protagonist, is going to tell this story? And I literally got angry with the answer that my inner muse gave me. And I said to everybody in the write-in, I'm like, I don't know if you saw me on the screen, but I just got really furious. Because the response was, of course, this story will be epistolary in form. And my frustration and anger comes from the fact that if that happens, that will be the third YA novel that I have drafted in epistolary form. And yeah, that has to get old at some point, I guess. But that just seems to be the way my brain processes these stories. But anyway, that is where I'm at. I'm kind of excited about the idea. I think the thing that's making me not excited about the idea is that I know that's not what I started the year thinking about. And I worry about derailing my own plans in following something shiny and new. But I haven't committed yet. We'll see. The thing that I am going to do now, and I'm basically talking this through with you, so if anybody else has this sort of issue with shiny new ideas, I'm kind of talking through my process so that you can see how I come to my conclusion, whether or not to fully commit to this or not. Number one is I had a seedling of an idea and I had to get it down. I had to give it its moment, right? So in October, I tend to do this before NaNoWriMo. I take write-ins and I give each seedling of an idea an hour. And then I spend the month thinking about all the different seedlings and deciding which one I was most excited about and which one gets my November devotion, right? So right now I wasn't really thinking about writing novels at all, so I didn't have many seedlings. I just had this one, but it still deserved its time. It needed its time. It needed its home in a notebook. It got written down, and I've done this not on March 28th or 29th. I've done this on, what was yesterday? Oh, yesterday was March 1st. I did it on March 1st so that I can spend this month with that seedling planted in a notebook and go on with everything else that I've planned for March, which is, going through critiques of Stop Writing Alone and writing my short stories and seeing if that idea really is something I can't ignore by the time April comes. And then if that's the case, hopefully I will have developed a routine and a pattern on showing up for my other writing projects through March, that I can find the space on the in-betweens of where this new thing will fit. So I don't just take a shiny new object and throw it in the mix immediately, because that, for me anyway, would be detrimental. I have to sort of set the groundwork of the things that were in the plans, and shiny new objects may have a place. I don't like to just dismiss them and say, no, that wasn't something I planned on doing, so it doesn't belong. However, I do like to give myself time and space to think, I don't want to say logically about it, but just really measuring all my options and seeing what makes sense. So that's where I'm at with all of the things. And I'm wondering where you are at. Are you writing consistently? We talked this week in the Happy Campers Club about what we are proud of of what we've accomplished so far this year, because many of us have had a very slow start to the year. So I just asked everybody, I said, look, I know that we can all talk about all the things that we didn't accomplish, how we started the year slow, and maybe we weren't getting our writing done, and, all the things, because it's been a rough go, right? But I just want one thing you're proud of, one thing you did accomplish, because there's no way you went 2 months without accomplishing something. And it doesn't have to be big. It could be small. It doesn't even have to be writing related, but just something. And so taking that and now coming into our intense writing time, we're getting back into the swing of things and finding our rhythm. And I am, I'm back into my rhythm of short story, but I'm wondering where you are at. Have you been in the rhythm all along? Did you not have a slow start to this year? And whether you've been in it or not been in it, are you excited about big projects coming up, the challenges of April, like all of those different writing challenges that are before you, opportunities to connect with writing community? Or are you still sort of giving yourself time to ease into it? Yeah. And I know that there's a lot going on in the world right now, and it may seem frivolous to be thinking about fiction or writing and, things that, when we are writers, they feel like they are, the act of writing is just for us. But please remember that story is incredibly powerful, whether it is fiction or your own story that you're sharing with the world in memoir, personal essay, or nonfiction as you help translate the world for people out there. All of this writing, you don't know who it's going to reach and who's going to need your writing. So please, if anyone is feeling like I shouldn't even be worried about my writing and getting to the page right now because there's bigger, badder things going on in the world, please know that it is your writing that in and of itself could be the service that is required or needed by someone out there who is in a heavy place, a place of suffering. And you just don't know. You don't know. And if you can't wrap your head around that, and I had this conversation with someone this week, just think about the stories that saved you. The stories that made you laugh on a really terrible day, or the story that made you feel seen in a way that you never felt before. And just keep listing all the stories that helped you at certain points in your life. And you'll see that they're not always like the really important stories, right? Sometimes it is that really funny, frivolous thing that was exactly the thing you needed to change an entire day around, to change, your mindset and get you to the next step of what you needed to do. So whatever it is you're writing, there is someone out there that needs it. So please get back to the page, get working. And if you feel good doing that, don't feel guilty about it for a second. Just know that once you get it out there, it's going to pay it forward and pay it forward and pay it forward. So get yourself the Writer Magazine, April 2022, April 2022, the 135th anniversary issue, because while it does celebrate their 135 years and it has a really cool picture of the cover of the first ever issue, there is a lot of juicy information for short story writers and those of us addicted to the M-dash. And then let me know. Reach out to me about where you are on your whole scheme of writing challenges right now or getting back to the page. And if you're looking for a place to reach out to me and hear back from me almost immediately, the Stop Writing Alone Network is it's open. It's ready for everybody to come on in. We have, a main page, which is like a regular group where everybody can interact. But then you can also do private messages in there. And I get the notifications for that stuff all the time. So I'm having private chats with people, public chats with people. It's a really great space. And it is the home base for things like the Happy Campers Club, the 52 Club, the Stop Reading Alone Club, and more things that will be coming as the year goes on. So, Stop Writing Alone Network. If you don't have the website, but it will be in the show notes, you can go to the Mighty Network's website and just search for Stop Writing Alone, and you can find it right there. And like I said, it's free to join, so you will be permitted in right away, and then we can get chatting about all the things. But I want you to have a fantastic week. Don't forget that tomorrow is Friday, and Friday is my Fiction Friday all over the place. I will be sharing a new writing prompt on the MV Rivera YouTube channel so that you can get your, what would it be? Are we in week 8 or 9 of the year? Oh, I'm losing track. Get your next story in your 52 stories in 52 weeks. And then also over on storyhoarder.substack.com, I'll be sharing a new short story of mine. So that you can read a little fiction, write a little fiction, get it all. It'll be wonderful. And and that'll be fantastic. So have a great week. Happy writing. And I will talk to you next Thursday.